In 1609, Galileo made his own telescope, which started his exploration of the universe. His discoveries, many of which went against the beliefs of the Catholic Church, would get him into trouble and eventually lead to a heresy trial. In the trial, he would defend himself and his theories in a heated encounter with the Roman Inquisition. Galileo was found guilty, but his theories have been proved right. On July 5, 1564, in Pisa, Italy, Galileo Galilei was born. He was the oldest of 6 or 7 kids born to Vincenzo Galilei and Giulia Amanati. Galileo's father, Vincenzo, was a well-known musician and music theorist that defied the rules of music by exploring and experimenting with music during the Renaissance, a time of change in Europe. The Renaissance time period was a cultural movement that encouraged knowledge and exploration in the sciences and arts. It stretched from the 14th century to the 16th century. During the time of the Renaissance, the Catholic Church was in control of much of Europe. In Galileo's time, the Roman Inquisition was enforcing its doctrines in Italy. It prosecuted those who acted against and believed in things that went against the Catholic Church's beliefs. Galileo's education was rather free-flowing and open-minded until he moved to Florence, Italy in 1574 and attended a Jesuit monastery. 9 years later, in 1583, Galileo went back to Pisa to study medicine at the University of Pisa. While attending the University of Pisa, Galileo learned of Copernicus and his theories of the universe. Copernicus, as well as many others, including the Catholic Church, believed in the geocentric theory. In the geocentric theory, the Earth is in the center of the universe, and the stars and planets revolve around it. Galileo would later challenge this theory with his belief that the sun was at the center of the universe. While he was attending the university, he also studied physics and mathematics. He was intrigued by how science and math relate and coexist. At the university, he was known for his questions and arguments over topics he did not agree with. In 1585, he left the university without a degree but with a newfound interest in science. He took the job and worked there for 3 years until the University of Padua offered him a job as chair of mathematics at their school. Galileo couldn't pass it up. He had been having financial issues since his father died in 1591. Now he would be able to conduct the experiments he wanted to do. While teaching at Pisa and Padua, Galileo used his position to run experiments that challenged many long-standing. In 1609, a basic telescope was invented. It was an advanced version of a spyglass, which was invented in 1608 by Hans Lippershey. Galileo was soon making discoveries that directly challenged the Catholic Church. Some discoveries supported the heliocentric system, which puts the sun at the center of our solar system. One showed Jupiter has 4 satellites circling it, and another showed that Venus goes through phases like our moon. Other discoveries implied that the universe was not perfect. For example, the moon has craters and high and low points. Galileo came up with the conclusion that the sun remains fixed in the center of the circle of heavenly bodies without changing its place, and the earth, turning upon itself, moves round the sun. With discoveries mounting, Galileo faced backlash by many Catholics as well as many scientists. They believed in the perfect universe with the earth in the center, and that Galileo was defying church law and should be prosecuted. Galileo believed that if he went to Rome and showed the Roman Inquisition his discoveries, they would let him do his work. He said this about the situation: "I do not feel obliged to believe that the same God who endowed us with senses, reason, and intellect has intended to forego their use and by some other means to give us knowledge by which we can attain them." So in March 1611, Galileo traveled to Rome and presented his ideas. The Church approved of Galileo's findings and allowed him to continue researching. However, they did not agree with Galileo's conclusions. Galileo continued to make findings that clashed with old ideas. The claims against Galileo escalated until he decided to go to Rome again. He quickly found that less people were interested and soon left home defeated. Later that same year, the Roman Inquisition ruled the heliocentric system to be foolish and absurd, and anyone who believed or supported it would be prosecuted for heresy. Galileo was astounded by the Church's quick action. He believed religion should not control what he was studying. He said this about the ruling: "In questions of science, the authority of 1,000 is not worth the humble reasoning of a." But laws are laws, so Galileo was forced to lay low for 7 years, in which he studied insects. After those 7 years, in 1623, a new pope was elected. The new pope, Pope Urban VIII, was a more open-minded pope than the previous pope, Pope Paul V. Galileo saw this as an opportunity to have the bans of the heliocentric system be lifted. Pope Urban would not lift the ban because he himself believed in Copernicus's teachings. Even though he would not lift the ban, he saw no harm in writing about the heliocentric theory for the sake of a debate. He cautioned Galileo to present the heliocentric theory as an unproven idea. Galileo quickly got started on a book entitled Dialogue Concerning the Two Chief World Systems. It took him 5 years to write, and when he was done, the plague delayed his publishing even more. In 1632, his book was finally published. Right away, there was backlash over the book. Galileo obviously favored the heliocentric side. The Pope turned on Galileo, ordering an investigation of the book. He was soon ordered to Rome to stand trial against heresy. The trial lasted 10 weeks, but Galileo was only there for 4 days of it. He was old and frail and could not withstand the trial's long days for weeks on end. In the end, the verdict was clear. Galileo was charged with heresy. The worst penalty for heresy was torture or death. Galileo was allowed to escape the worst if he declared the heliocentric system to be wrong. On June 22, 1633, Galileo gave a statement abandoning the heliocentric theory. He was sentenced to house arrest for the rest of his life. Throughout the trials and hardships of Galileo, his daughter was a great encouragement to him. They wrote often, and she admired him greatly. Unfortunately, she died less than a year after the trial that put Galileo under house arrest. This could be debated as the darkest times for Galileo. He felt alone and holed up in his house, even though he constantly had visitors and several people living with him, including family and pupils that helped with research and keeping his life upbeat. He wrote another book about physics which had to be smuggled out of Italy. He died on January 2, 1642, at the age of 77. The legacy of Galileo is enormous. He was a leader in science and an experimenting mastermind behind many discoveries. Before Galileo's new way of observing things, people just believed what seemed to be right. For instance, the sun and planets seemed to be revolving around the Earth. Therefore, the Earth has to be in the center of the solar system. Galileo changed this by observing things for long periods of time and studying what he saw. As for his way of experimenting, Galileo paved a new way for a type of science called the scientific method. You could call Galileo the father of the scientific method. He was the first of his time to actually run extensive tests and experiments until he was sure of the results. The Catholic Church held the ban on Copernicus's teachings until 1758 and dropped his opposition against the heliocentric system altogether. Finally, in 1992, Pope John Paul II expressed regret about the Galileo affair and how it was handled. In conclusion, Galileo changed the field of science by challenging beliefs and theories that nobody else had questioned before. He also encountered the Roman Inquisition in several high-stake confrontations that ended his exploration of the universe, even though his theories were right.